So welcome. I've got a bit of a journey here in the car, so I thought I would do a long form video answering a question which, when it comes to our TikTok lives, we are always asked, and it's how we started the business. Now, for those who don't know, we've been trading for roughly, in fact, this could be a very poignant video, and I didn't expect it to be, because I think this week, which is the last week of November, marks 2 years of us trading officially. So what I want you to do was to answer that question with a big video, rather than always doing little nuggets on short form. I thought I'd go for long form instead. So we do a lot of our trading on TikTok Shop. In fact, I'd say probably 80% of our sales come from TikTok Shop. We started off on eBay and Etsy, but for anybody who is on Etsy at the moment, or anybody who got kicked off like we did, you will know that there's always this concern, really, that you're only a short period away from being chucked off. They never tell you why. They never really explain the reasoning behind why they give you a strike. So we followed all the rules on our shop. We did nothing wrong. And then just out of the blue, a year and a half ago, they completely took our shop down. No explanation. They've got dreadful customer service, and that was that. It went. So now we do, as I say, most of our stuff on TikTok Shop. We sell quite a lot from our own shop as well, which is printtreasures.co.uk. But I want to start with the idea of how it all came about. And I remember it specifically because I don't often get blown away by tech. I don't know if it's the age I am, I don't know if it's because I tend to have my finger on the pulse when it does come to tech. But I remember going to an exhibition once, and it was a Christian exhibition in Milton Keynes in the UK. And I saw this puppet ministry, and they had this machine at the front. And I didn't even know what it was. I just saw this thing moving quite quickly, and it was producing eyes, puppet eyes at the time. I was like, what's that? And I must have chewed the ear off of the guy for about an hour, easily. And he was telling me all about, this is called a 3D printer. And the principle is it melts the plastic through a tiny little pinhole, and it makes things. And I was blown away by that, absolutely. And then after we'd finished talking, I was probably there for another half an hour just watching it. And this would have been winter time 3 years ago, that would have been. So we're looking at maybe February time, 23? I'm not good at dates, maybe 22. And I knew that my birthday was coming up, so I spent, after that exhibition, because one thing about me, I tend to get my teeth into something. If I'm in, I'm all in, you see. So I was watching YouTube videos all about it and reviews, and everybody seemed to be buying a printer just to start things off with, it was a Creality Ender, and it was an Ender 2 version 3, I think it was at the time. There'd been a few other variations of this over the years, but this was the one that had the improvements that apparently made it a lot easier to print. But more on that later, because it was anything but easy to print on. So I'm of that age where people ask, what do you want for your birthday? Can we give you money? Can we take you out? That kind of thing. And I says, look, I really, really want a 3D printer. And this one is about £200. And my wife, she tends to be very skeptical with the things that I say I'm going to do. And I like to prove her wrong and say, well, you did say that we couldn't do it, and we have, and it's very successful. But anyway, she thought it will end up going to the charity shop, it will end up in the attic, never used. I was like, well, do you know what? It's my birthday, and I want one. So everybody chipped in, my brother, my mum and dad, my wife, the kids, all that kind of stuff. And then on my birthday, the 18th of May, I got my very own 3D printer. Now the thing was that technology has changed quite a lot in just the short time I've been doing this. So this printer, it was build it yourself. Even now, some printers arrive and you have to build a bit of the gantry, you have to put Bowden tubes on, that kind of thing. But back then, it was actually properly build it yourself. And when everybody left my house in the evening, my brother stuck around and we built this 3D printer. It took us hours. In fact, I think it took us well into the early hours of the morning. We didn't read the instructions like blokes don't tend to do. And my wife, in the end, she was the one who started dictating the instructions and saying, right, you put this in there, and we did it. Now, the thing is with those kind of printers is that you have to get everything accurate. So if you put anything on a millimetre out of place, it will affect the printing quality. So we went through all this and we had to then sort of undo a few things, tighten other things up, and we got there in the end. Now, you can probably see videos of this on YouTube before you print the setups you need to do, and there was quite a few of them back then. One of them, which used to drive everybody mad, was the bed leveling. And what you need to do is to heat up the whole system. So the build plate and the hot end, otherwise known as the nozzle, the bit where the plastic comes out of. And then you would have to get a piece of A4 paper and you would have to put the nozzle in between the build plate and the paper. So you've got build plate, paper, and then the nozzle, and you'd need just enough friction. If you had too much friction and it almost rips a hole in the paper, then your results on the printing, it would just all be squished, it would be rubbish. Because of course the plastic needs a little bit of space to actually put the layers down so it can build the items. And if you haven't got enough space, if you have got too much space, then the plastic won't set on the build plate and it will just go everywhere like spaghetti. So this you'd have to do after every print to make sure it had stayed right, and before every print. But to adjust it, you had to go through every corner, tightening or untightening these little bolts on there. So that was the first thing. And then you had to measure the extruder rate, which means that the printer's putting enough plastic down through the nozzle, enough so you have a good print. Because again, if it's too much, it'll just end up blobby and there'll be no real detail there. And if it isn't enough, you'll just get this weird sort of like crusty, useless substance that comes out. So it was very, very temperamental. So we were doing all this and we managed to do a few prints and it was all right. And it was just amazing. For anybody who's never tried or even seen a 3D printer, you'll see it for the first time and you'll be like, this is amazing. This is absolutely incredible. So I was doing this and then I started just sort of looking at, well, how can I put this to good use? Because for me, I love to do business. It's not really about the making money. It's more about the fact that you're creating something and there's a need for it and other people, they buy it. That has always amazed me. So I manage 8 successful Facebook pages. Now these pages, they tend to be fan pages for British TV programmes. One's Only Fools and Horses. If you've never watched the programme, then you need to, it is amazing. The other one is Last of the Summer Wine, and I've got a few others as well. So I was thinking, I wonder if I could create novelty items like key rings and coasters and then advertise my Etsy page through the Facebook pages that I've got. So the first thing I did, I can't design still. I'm quite good at 3D printing, I'm quite good at coming up with ideas, but I can't actually design things. So I went on Fiverr, which again is a great way to get started with making your own products, because you won't have to spend weeks and months learning how to do CAD. You can just tell somebody what you want, the sizes, and they'll do it for you for sometimes, well, a £5. So I did that, and I had a keyring designed for Carl Pilkington, because that's one of the other pages I was managing, the guy who's a friend of Ricky Gervais and used to do Idiot Abroad. And the other one was a green Buddha, a green Shrek Buddha. And I don't know how that came about, but I was just like, I think that would sell because it's quite a novelty item. So I had the file made. I only had one printer here, and as I said, they were very temperamental. So I started making them, and it went bonkers. Around November time, we were selling hundreds of these a week. Now the problem was, of course, that I couldn't keep up with it, because out of the 5 key rings I'd be printing on these printers, or printer, I only had one then, you'd usually lose 2 of them because they'd just be a failed print. They'd be all misshaped, the surface wouldn't be flat, they wouldn't be any good. So I was producing probably about 4 of these key rings every 6 hours. Now, if you imagine, I needed several hundreds of these a week. So it was becoming a bit of a problem, this. So I decided, right, what I'll do is I will buy another printer. And I did so. But I bought it this time pre-owned off Marketplace, and I paid hardly anything for it. The other printer originally was about £200, something like that. And this, it was a guy who had bought it. He fancied doing 3D printing, he got fed up of it, and he decided to advertise it on Marketplace. Now, for anybody who's buying a 3D printer, look around after Christmas, around January, February, and you'll see loads of people who have done that exact same thing. They thought it's really easy to do, I'll be a millionaire within a few days. And then they think, actually, it's not quite as easy as I thought it would be, this, and they sell it off. So you can get a good bargain. And that's what I did. So I picked up this printer for about 80 quid. And we started using that, which helped us. And then we needed more. So again, I went on Marketplace, and a guy was selling 3 of these printers for, I think, £150 for the whole lot. He'd had enough, or he'd upgraded, and he didn't want to do it anymore. So I went and got those. But the problem is, as I explained, that it was such a time-consuming thing to set them off. You had to do the bed leveling, you had to do all of the extrusion rates, all this kind of stuff, and it was failing all the time, and the slightest error, and it would mess up the whole thing. So I was becoming quite a 3D printed geek, really. Not that I was 3D printed, a 3D printing geek. And I was in a lot of these Facebook groups, which again, they're a great resource. If you are looking for people who can answer your questions, go on them. There's loads of them. In fact, there's specialist ones for certain printers that you may have. And I asked in this forum, I says, look, like most people, it's so time consuming on these Ender printers. What's around the corner? Is there any that are more automated? And this was the first time that I ever heard of a company called Bambu Lab. And these were being referred to as the Apple of 3D printing. And what had happened is some fallout at DJI, and some of the engineers had decided that they'd leave DJI and they'd take their experiences to create something else. Where's the problem? What needs bringing to the mainstream? And they saw 3D printing. So they'd already brought out a printer which was about £1,500, and that was well out of my price range. But then they were about to bring out a printer that was called the P1P. Now this will be different to the Ender printers because it wasn't what we call a bed slinger. Now a bed slinger is where the print bed moves like that, and so does the nozzle, you see. But this one was completely different. where the bed only moved up and down and it was the hot end that moved around. And this is meant to be more efficient, you see, and it's meant to mean that the printer will last longer. I think the jury's out on that now a little bit, really. And I've got a load of these bed slingers which have done thousands and thousands of hours of printing, and they're still as good as they were when I got them new. So this printer was to be released and it would be £600, and I was thinking, do you know what, everything's automated on it. And I'd never seen anything quite like this before, where it literally was, you would press and it would print. You wouldn't have to do any of the bed leveling, it was all automatic. It would know exactly how much plastic to extrude. It was perfect, and it even had a built-on camera, so you could check your prints from wherever you are in the world. It was amazing. So I decided I'd take the leap and I'd get one of these. And that's what I did. And I remember it arriving and I was like a kid at Christmas. It was amazing. You just basically turned it on, you pressed sync, and it would do everything for you. So this was basically doing the workload of 3 of these printers I already had. So I decided I might sell these because they weren't being used anymore. The time I was taking to get them all ready, to level the beds, to do all that kind of stuff, it wasn't worth it. It was taking about half an hour prep time. Whereas this new printer, the Bambu Lab, was doing it all on its own. I was like, this is a winner. And around this time, typically just as we'd invested in more printers, Etsy decided they would take our shop down. We were selling thousands of items on there. We were a star seller. It was fast becoming nearly a full-time job for us, this. And just to point out actually that a lot of people say, is this our full-time job of 3D printing? No, it's not. So I work in radio and my wife is a midwife. So this is just basically a hobby. I refer to it still as this, a hobby that just got out of hand. So we could have quite easily then have gone full-time with Etsy, but they closed the shop. I was fuming because you invest so much time in something, and I don't mind if we get punished because we've done something wrong. If we broke a rule, that kind of thing, that's fine. But to just take it down with no explanation and then offer no customer service as to why they've taken it down is bang out of order. And this was happening a lot. I think it's still happening a lot. And there was people who, it's their full-time job and they just get their shop shut down. And they're very, very crafty, Etsy, no pun intended, about when you set up a new account, because they will not let you set up a new account with any email address which has an association to the account that was barred. They even do it with the IP address as well. So it was impossible to open up another one. And to be honest with you, we were so fed up, we were like, we're not going to do this anymore. Why are we going to set up another channel so they can take this revenue off us? Then whenever they want to, they can take it down again with no explanation. So we were looking at other opportunities here, and we looked into TikTok Shop. And it was something that was just happening then, really. There was a few people who were trading on it, but not many people had heard of it. And we decided to set up an account, and then one night, it was just me and Sam, and I do not exaggerate here, we just set the camera going live, and then I was there with one of our items, which is still one of our biggest sellers, the gear ball, and I was there playing with it and describing what it did, and then saying, if you want one, just click here now. And I think we sold about 10 items in one live from our front room. There was no fancy lights, there was no fancy set behind us. I don't think we even had proper microphones on. There was nothing to it, and people were buying. And we got really excited about this because with my background, I'm quite good at talking, believe it or not. And don't be fooled by this, I'm usually okay in front of the camera. So it was a win-win really, because we could do something that not many people could do, in the sense that talking non-stop. And one of my bucket lists is to do auction TV. I don't know why, but all these bid up TVs and stuff, I love it so much. So this was like, wow, this is amazing, and we can make a few quid as well. And there'll probably be people now who are watching this who were with us on the journey at the start, and you'll remember that we then moved from my sofa to having a little coffee table in our lounge. Every few nights we'd go on, we'd have the phone resting on a chair, and we'd have this coffee table full of our items. If you go back and you troll through, if you've got enough time to, if you troll through all of our previous videos from the early days, you'll be able to see this. And it's quite a nostalgic thing now when we watch them back. So this started to take off a little bit. We were thinking, well, we've got this printer here, but the problem is we couldn't really afford another one of those. And then lo and behold, Bambu Lab broke one of their promises. They always said that they'd never release a bed slinger printer because it's old technology and nobody wants that anymore. And then they said that they're going to bring out a bed slinger which will cost under £300, and it would have all the regular technology that Bambu Lab already have, like the bed leveling, all this kind of stuff. And I was really excited. Then in walks the Bambu Lab A1 Mini. This was a bed slinger. It was about £200 and the print quality was amazing. The only slight problem was that the print size, hence the name the Mini, wasn't very big. So it couldn't print big items, and it would only print a few little fidget toys, which is what we were selling at the time, and it would only print a few of these key rings. But we got one anyway, and it was amazing. I've still got that printer now, and it's like a friend of the family. I cherish it, I really do. Out of all the printers, that's my favourite one. And we were using this, it was amazing. And then we bought another one, and it was going well. We were selling on TikTok Shop, not masses, but we were selling on TikTok Shop, and it was all good. And then Bambu Lab said that they were going to bring out a bigger version, the A1, and this would be a budget printer, but again, it would have all the benefits of the other printers that they've done. So I got one, and it was amazing. Honestly, truly amazing. And this really is where the journey started for us. But one of the problems was space, of course, because where could we put these printers? And they were ending up in my office at the radio station, which wasn't ideal because it's a radio station, and we'd be getting people in there thinking, what are all these? And it was weird. So me and Sam, my wife, decided that we would invest a bit in this, and we would turn our garage into a workshop and a print farm. So we had the floors painted so there'd be no dust coming up and affecting the printing. We had it boarded out, new electrics put in, and the great thing is that our house has got solar panels. So when it's a hot day, a nice sunny day, which doesn't happen very often in the UK, let's be honest, we would be able to sort of print for free. So that's what we did. And we have been in that workshop now for about a year and 6 months, I think, off the top of my head. And that's where we do our TikTok lives from now, and it's really become just a workshop. So now we have got roughly 13 printers, all A1s, and I'm going to say something which will probably mean all the 3D printing geeks, I include myself in that side. Nope, you're wrong, Gareth. But I think for the price, the Bambu Lab A1 is the best printer on the market. Genuinely, from a person who's used loads of different brands, I think it's the best. We've got a workshop full of them now, and they are just workhorses. They never really chuck up a problem, and even if they do, it's quite easy to fix. So now we are one of the biggest 3D printer manufacturers, not making the prints of course, making the items in the UK. We have shifted nearly 9,000 items on our TikTok shop. We sell items on eBay as well, and we also sell from our website, which is printtreasures.co.uk. Sorry for the bleeping here, but I am just parking up. So we keep going from strength to strength. I don't think it will be our full-time job because we don't really want it to be, if I'm honest. I love my job and so does my wife, but it's just a great journey that we've been on and we love it. We love that we've got this routine now where we will do a live on TikTok Saturdays and Sundays, and then we will post them out as we do the lives and on the Monday and the Tuesday. And then the rest of the week is going to shops, because we're in physical shops now around the Greater Manchester area, and stocking them up. So this is basically, I know it's not the first video on the channel, but it's the first one long form where I've shared with our audience how this all came about. We're always asked on our TikTok shop, so I thought I'd jump on and I'd just tell you all about it. And if you've got any questions, I don't want this to be really about us or what, aren't we great, we've done this and that. No, I want it to be encouragement for people who are starting out and they've got lots of questions like, do you know, where do you get your printers from? Where's the best place to get your PLA plastic from? What about boxes? Because boxes, the price of them at the moment has gone crazy. So this is what we're going to do on the channel, and if you've got any questions at all, then post it in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And on the next few episodes, we're going to be talking about exactly that, about boxes and how you manage the workload when you've got a young family and you've also got to get your parcels out within 3 days. So thanks for watching, and hopefully you'll join us again next time.